Welcome, everyone. Dr. Philip Ovadia here. Thank you for joining us for another live stream. Today, we have a great conversation lined up. I have Kathryn Everett from Chancellors Rock Farm here with me. And we're going to talk about some of the great work that she's been doing there to improve agriculture and, ranching, and we'll talk about some of the challenges and hope to give everyone maybe a little bit of insight as to what you should be thinking about as you're deciding where to get the animal protein. Hopefully, many of you in my audience, are already on board with getting more animal protein into your life, and we can talk about some of the factors that go into where you can get that from. So before we get into that, Kathryn, why don't you give a little bit of your background to our audience, and maybe talk a little bit about why and how you got involved with ranching.
Sure. It was definitely by default. But anyway, I had a background in landscape design, and my husband was in marketing, and we fell in love with this farm and bought this farm, and really kind of fell into farming because as we were learning about regenerative agriculture, it really for us represented the nexus where you can have working lands be productive ecologically and economically, and promote biodiversity and raise animals in a healthy way. Because we had all seen these, movies about traditional farming and, forcing animals to eat grain and just what that happens. And what that results in, and it's just an unhealthy product. And our goal really when we bought the farm was to prove that agriculture and biodiversity could work together to make a farm ecologically and economically profitable. And so the more we kind of learned about regenerative practices and how they are all focused on rebuilding the soil and getting the soil health right, and that really is the foundational building block for regenerative agriculture and biodiversity. And what it ends up translating to is cows that eat a healthier, more diverse diet produce a healthier, more diverse product. And that's healthier for the planet, and it's healthier for us. And we really, I guess because we had purchased the farm, and there were a few cattle on it, and it was a large farm, and you either mow or you're going to graze. And here in Virginia, we decided that we were going to continue to graze and bought more cattle. And then when we learned really about what cattle can do, and if you can use cattle like bison, how the bison used to roam and rove the prairie and graze and move on and graze and move on, and we had really healthy soils. And if we go back to kind of farming that way, using cattle like bison, we can really have profound impacts on rebuilding the soil. And so we really fell for this hook, line, and sinker because it just made so much sense to us, and it was a means of accomplishing our goals. And the product is really healthy cows, healthy land, healthy food. But we really saw it as a way to show that farming and conservation can work hand in hand, not necessarily be opposing elements as they often have been.
Yeah. So if this is the ideal, like it sounds like, right? Healthy land, healthy cattle, healthy food, which then translates to healthy humans. Why isn't it more common? Why is this so unusual?
Time, and money. It really kind of gets down to that. Most cattle are sold. People buy calves from the market, put them in feedlots, feed them grain. When cows eat grain, they put on a lot of weight really quickly. And then you can sell a cow. It has more marbling in it. You can sell a cow for a lot more money, a lot faster. It takes from birth to bite about 3 years to finish a cow on grass. And you're always having to kind of manage the nutrient density of your pastures and rotate them through so that your cows are putting on weight. And it requires a more adaptive approach, which is, I think, you know, we're a small scale operation. You know, the big question is, why do we have food systems that industrialize everything? And I think that, you know, when you do that, you're going to get industrial answers. And we have kind of, farming has kind of fallen into a habit of, you know, tilling the soil and putting all these man-made inputs into the ground to try to, I'm talking about fertilizer and tilling and, you know, putting all of these inputs into the farm to make it fit faster and just sell more. And I'm not being very articulate, but, you know, really we have gotten to the point where we have relied on monocrops. You know, you're either doing one or another. And what does that do? But it takes things out of, it's not in balance. You know, if you farm within balance and you try to have a little bit more diversity in your operation with different grazing animals by, you know, rotating and really focusing on growing grass and rebuilding the soil, nature takes care of itself. It's kind of farming with nature as opposed to trying to, you know, absolutely dominate it, really.
Yeah, I think that's something that a lot of people don't understand is that, you know, traditional, you know, the more traditional sort of farming approaches really are trying to, you know, dominate, as you said, overwhelm nature and get things, you know, try and manipulate the environment to such a degree that you get the one limited thing that you're looking for out of it. But by doing so, you destroy the complexity that is so important in nature. And you know,
And it takes time. I mean, the whole goal of us buying this farm and setting off on this mission is to prove that this works and to prove that it works economically and it works ecologically. And you know, when we first started, we had 446 acres and about 45 cows. We purchased the farm next door to us because it was adjacent to us and we needed to scale up our operations. But it was also the perfect example of a traditional farm. They were buying stocker cows, growing corn, force feeding the cattle corn. I mean, don't get me wrong, cattle like corn, but it's just like we like sugar. You know, it's not good for us to eat sugar and it's not good for cows to eat corn. They're not meant to process that. And so they had been using herbicide to insecticides and to create this monocrop of growing the corn, feeding the cows the silage. The cows were drinking out of the water, you know, pooping in the stream, polluting the bay. I mean, it was just the perfect example of how not to farm. And so we purchased that property and we now have 700 acres in total. And that is allowing us to kind of take these measurement points. We have 19 different measurement points across both parts of the farm where we're going in and testing the how quick the level of aggregate, how fast the water perks, looking at the plant biodiversity, measuring the microbiology of the soil, so we can have a real before and after of how does this change and how quickly can we rebuild the soil and what does that look like economically for other farms to roll this out. You're building like a $10 hole for a $1 plant as opposed to a, you know, as opposed to the vice versa. So that's really our mission. And we have, there's research that we have, we're supporting, and that's ongoing with the Smithsonian, which is testing the microbiology of the soil and linking that to the microbiology of the biodome of the cow that's been raised regeneratively by looking at its poop. And, there is a correlation between that, the cow's health, and then the quality of the meat and the meat health. So this is really what we're trying to kind of set out and prove. And then hopefully other farms, will adopt these practices because it will make sense. It certainly makes sense when you think about reducing your cost of diesel, fertilizer, all of these things. You're measuring what you don't do versus what you do. And in the long run, economically, and I think ecologically, it'll pay out.
Yeah, and maybe you can touch a little bit. Obviously, we're all concerned about health here, and maybe talk about the health of the animals. What do you observe in these animals that are eating what they're supposed to be eating, grass, versus, like you said, maybe what was going on at neighboring farms where they're feeding them the grain and the corn? What do you see in terms of the health of the animal we'll start with, and then maybe we'll get to how that translates to human health?
Right. That's a great question. Well, cows are not meant to eat corn, and they need antibiotics. When typical cow herds are given antibiotics, giving anti-worm medicine. I mean, it's a vicious cycle that you are proceeding. And when you eat grass, and let's talk about eating grass, because grass is good. Grass-fed and finished, and when I say finished, I mean they eat grass their whole lives, because a lot of marketers will say, oh, this is a grass-fed cow, but at the last 3 months of its life, they'll put them on grain to gain weight and to increase the marbling. So by nature, a grass-fed animal is much leaner, and there's less fat tissue in it. There's a difference too between regeneratively grazed grass-fed versus regular grass-fed, because fescue is a monocrop, and most of our pastures are monocrops of fescue. And fescue is a cool season grass that goes dormant in the summer. It's most of its nutrient content is in the spring and in the fall. If you have diversity of forage and different forage, I'm talking about warm season grasses, Timothy grass, orchard grass, southern Sudan grass. If you have more diversity of forage, just like for us, if we just ate the same thing all the time, that wouldn't be so healthy. Same thing for a cow. Diversity in diet allows a cow to kind of select what it needs to eat based on how it's feeling, what it's motivated to eat. So the whole point of regenerative agriculture is to build up the healthy soil and that healthy soil connection. And what that means is fungi attached to the end of the roots of plants that have that symbiotic exchange with plants that say, okay, you're going to suck more minerals out of the earth for me, for my production. And the plant's going to give the fungi the sugar from chlorophyll. So that's a nice symbiotic relationship. And it helps us grow better roots, better, stronger grasses, which helps with carbon sequestration, blah, 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 blah. All that, water retention, all that jazz. Well, when you have healthy soils filled with all that fungi and all those microbial stuff, that results in plants that have a higher sugar content and aggregate, which gets looser, deeper. Our topsoil, we used to have so much more topsoil than we do now. And when you have more topsoil, what that does is it releases the native seed that's in the seed bank, and you get more diversity of forage. And cows, how we measure success, and I know I'm going on and on, so flag me if I get on my soapbox too much, but um, how you measure success is counting how many different plant species the cows are grazing on. And what you want is more species below the ground, more species above the ground. And that results in a healthier cow and a healthier product. And you can see it because they don't have dirty tails. You can see it because there's dung beetles. We're no longer, we stopped giving fly treatment to our cows years ago because, and we certainly don't give them any antibiotics, and we don't give them anything. I mean, they can self-medicate with what they're eating, in the pastures.
Yeah, it's amazing. And, again, this is, I always kind of think about, this isn't something new that you and, the other regenerative ranchers out there are discovering, right? This is what we always knew
Always
and
do.
forgot. And
Yeah,
now we're just rediscovering it.
we're
And that's,
rediscovering it.
yeah,
Yeah. And
yeah.
rediscovering it with us, with the science to support it, because it's really, you hinted at a good question. How do you scale this up? And I don't have the answer to that. I don't know how you do that. But I do know that we're going to do our best on this plot to do, and hopefully other farms will be as motivated, and people will be motivated to go and buy local food, and to ask questions about how their food is processed. And I'd like to think that we eat less meat but eat better quality meat.
Yeah, and another important aspect of this, and questions that people should be asking, where is my food coming from, right? And
Right.
not that it's coming from the supermarket down the street, right? But what is really in that? Where is it coming from? And the sad reality is that for the majority of what's called food, at least in the supermarket, there's no way that you're going to be able to figure that out. And but if you're able to connect with a local rancher, like yourself, and you can have that conversation, and you can understand exactly what that cow was eating and how they were raised and everything that went into it, so you can then have the confidence of knowing what's going into your bodies.
Right.
And I think that's an admirable goal. And how do we scale this is exactly what you said. We get a lot more ranchers doing this in all of the localities, and now we don't have to be sourcing our food from all around the world. We can get back to local communities that are able to sustain themselves in this way. um, so how long have you been doing this now?
Well, not a long time. Six years.
Yeah.
We had the advantage of not knowing how to do it. And we had, because we didn't have any preconceived notions, and we were open to new ideas. And when we first started, we were very fortunate to meet somebody from American Farmland Trust, which is doing great work about how to keep farms in production, preserve land, do it regeneratively. How do we make protect farms and farmland? And when we started, we were asked to participate in the Sustainable Grazing Project, which we did. And at that point, we were limiting the pasture that a cow could graze in and letting them eat everything down, broccoli and carrots, and just eat everything down, then move them and let that field rest. We learned a couple years later that actually is not the best way to do it, because plants are really the armor on the earth. And if you don't have that armor, what happens is the temps get really high, and you cook the soil microbes. So it's much better in terms of grazing and grazing practices to do adaptive grazing, which essentially is eating 50% of the forage that's above ground. Because if you think about a plant, and this gets into kind of climate change too, because I think the only way we're going to be able to produce food is through regenerative agriculture, because we're facing extreme conditions with droughts and global warming, and the only way you can kind of do it is if you practice this way. Because if you take a plant, a plant is half of it's above the ground and half of it's below the ground. If a cow eats all the way down to the ground, or below 50%, 70, 90%, that's where we used to be grazing, it stops the growth of the roots for up to 2 weeks, and the plant goes into like stasis. It's shocked. It can't recover. But if you eat only 50% and leave the rest for the plant to continue to process chlorophyll and all of that, there's no setback, and the roots get bigger, and the plants rebound faster. And we found this to be true in our soil tests. The fields that we put mechanical inputs on, we used turkey litter one year, they had the worst soil of all of our pastures. Not immediately, because it was like feeding the pastures crack. They greened up right away. But later, it really, like a year and a half later, it showed that was at the harm of all the soil microbes, doing that. So if you focus on roots and root growth and just leaving enough, and it just makes sense to your point about doing it the way it used to be. You don't harvest everything. You leave half for, everything to regenerate. It's just kind of common sense, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. And so amazing stuff that you're doing. Like you said, better for the planet, better for the animals, and ultimately better for the humans as well. So again, for people, it's Chancellors Rock Farm. Give people where they can find you, maybe on social media, and the website for people that want to find out more about this.
Thank you. It's chancellorsrock.com. We do have an Instagram, and we're hoping we have a farm store that's on site. The other thing, shameless plug, is we are a lodging event space. We have 4 houses on the property where we do tours and educational events and private events, and people can come and stay on the farm and learn about how we farm and shop at the store and see it in action. So we're really excited about that.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely encourage people to check that out. And for anyone in the audience that wants to maybe learn a little bit more about animal proteins and protein in general, we have a new course on mastering protein, your secret weapon to optimal health. And you can get that course for just $1. So I encourage everyone, go to ifixhearts.com/protein-course. It's up on the screen there. Put in the code live stream, and you'll get that for just $1. So thank you, Kathryn, for joining us today. Very fascinating discussion. And thank you, everyone in the audience, for taking some time out of your day to learn about animal proteins.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity.
And we will see you all next time.